You already know what bad sleep feels like. The ceiling, the clock, the exact sound your house makes at 2 a.m. when everyone else is unconscious and you are very, very awake. But here's something most people never think about. Not all bad sleep is the same kind of bad sleep. There are actually three distinct types of insomnia, three completely different patterns, three completely different causes, three completely different fixes. And the reason most people never get better is simple. They're trying to fix the wrong one. So, this video is going to do something a little different. By the end of it, you're going to know exactly which type you have. Not guessing, not probably this one, actually knowing, because you're going to recognize yourself inside one of these descriptions so clearly that it's going to feel a little uncomfortable. Let's start with the number that might make you feel slightly less alone. Around 1 in 3 adults will experience insomnia symptoms at some point. Not occasionally sleeping badly, actual insomnia symptoms. And somewhere between 10 and 15% of adults deal with it chronically. That's not a fringe problem. That's a significant portion of every office, every neighborhood, every family. And yet, most people who struggle with sleep have never once stopped to ask, which kind is mine? They just know it's bad. They just know it's exhausting. They just know that something isn't working and they've been blaming themselves for it for years. Here's what I want you to take from the next 20 minutes. You are not a bad sleeper. You are a specific kind of sleeper who hasn't been given the right framework yet. That framework has three parts. Type 1, sleep onset insomnia. You know this one. You get into bed at a reasonable hour, you're genuinely tired, your body is ready, and then nothing. You lie there 5 minutes, 15, 30, an hour. Your body is horizontal, your eyes are closed, and your brain is absolutely, completely, catastrophically awake. It's going through the conversation you had 3 days ago. It's making a mental list of things you forgot to do. It's suddenly very interested in a decision you haven't made yet. It's rehearsing a difficult conversation that may or may not ever happen. It's doing everything except the one thing you need it to do. This is sleep onset insomnia, trouble falling asleep, and it is far and away the most commonly reported type. But what's actually happening here? Because it's not random, it's not weakness, it's not your brain being difficult for the sake of it. There's a very specific biological mechanism underneath this, and once you understand it, the whole thing starts to make sense. Here's what's going on. Sleep requires your nervous system to shift gears. During the day, your body runs on a state of alertness. Stress hormones like cortisol keep you sharp, reactive, ready to handle whatever comes at you. As evening falls, a healthy sleep system starts winding that down. Cortisol drops, melatonin rises, your core body temperature begins to lower, your heart rate slows. The whole system is meant to ease itself into a lower gear, gradually, so that by the time you're in bed, your body and brain are genuinely prepared to switch off. In sleep onset insomnia, that wind down doesn't happen cleanly. The stress hormones stay elevated. Cortisol doesn't drop the way it should. Your nervous system remains in a mild state of alert, not panicking, not in crisis, just on, just running, just watching. Researchers call this cognitive hyperarousal. Your brain is not malfunctioning, it is doing exactly what it evolved to do. It's staying vigilant, it's scanning for threats, it's keeping you available for problems that might need solving. The trouble is that bedtime is not a threat. Your ceiling is not a threat. But your nervous system hasn't gotten the message. And here's the part that makes it worse. The more nights this happens, the more your brain starts to associate bed with the experience of lying awake. You get into bed, and your nervous system reads that as a cue. Not a cue to sleep, but a cue to start monitoring. It becomes a loop. The bed itself becomes the trigger. If you've ever noticed that you feel sleepier on the couch than in your actual bedroom, that's why. Your bed has been conditioned as a place of wakefulness, not rest. Does any of this sound like you? The lying awake for 30, 45, 60 minutes or more? The racing thoughts that seem to activate the second your head hits the pillow? The feeling that sleep is something that happens to other people while you're busy being conscious? If that's your pattern, if falling asleep is the problem, and once you're actually asleep, you tend to stay asleep reasonably well, then you are almost certainly looking at sleep onset insomnia. Remember that. We'll come back to what it means for you specifically. Type 2 sleep maintenance insomnia. This is the type people often don't even realize counts as insomnia. Because you do fall asleep, maybe quickly, maybe easily, maybe better than most people you know. And then something happens at 1:40 or 3:12 or 4:27. Your eyes open. At first, you think it's nothing. You'll roll over, you'll drift back off. But now you're awake enough to notice that you're awake. You check the time. Bad idea. Now you're doing math. If I fall asleep right now, I can still get 4 hours. If I fall asleep in 20 minutes, maybe three and a half. If I don't fall asleep soon, tomorrow is going to be awful. And just like that, the night has split in two. This is sleep maintenance insomnia. The problem isn't getting to sleep. The problem is staying asleep or waking too early and not being able to return to sleep. And again, there is a mechanism here. A normal night of sleep is not one flat, uniform state. It's a cycle. Early in the night, you tend to get more deep sleep. Later in the night, sleep naturally becomes lighter. That's completely normal. Your brain is moving through different stages, and in the second half of the night, you're simply easier to wake. That means this form of insomnia often hides inside a perfectly normal first few hours. You fall asleep, which makes you think the system is working, but later on, when sleep is lighter, the underlying problem shows itself. Sometimes that problem is the same hyper alertness we talked about in type 1, just delayed. Sometimes it's stress. Sometimes it's a very sensitive sleep system reacting to noise, temperature, light, a partner moving, a full bladder, or the simple fact that your brain has learned that 3 a.m. is now a time to become conscious. And once that pattern repeats often enough, the wake up itself becomes conditioned. Your body stirs slightly, which everyone does, many times a night. But instead of drifting straight back down, your brain fully surfaces. It notices the wake up. It checks in. It asks questions. Am I awake? How long have I been awake? Is this going to ruin tomorrow? Why does this always happen? Now you're not just awake, you're supervising the fact that you're awake. That's the trap. The second half of the night is already lighter. Add monitoring, frustration, and clock watching, and a brief awakening turns into a full event. If this is your type, the experience is often incredibly specific. You don't fear bedtime. In fact, you may feel relieved when your head hits the pillow because you usually can fall asleep. Your problem is what happens later. The night feels unreliable. You never trust sleep to hold. Sometimes you wake once and lie there for an hour. Sometimes you wake several times and never feel like you fully sink back down. Sometimes you wake at 4:30 or 5 a.m., long before you want to, and your brain acts as if morning has already started. And this is where people get confused. They say, I can't have insomnia. I fall asleep fine. But insomnia isn't only about the front door of the night, it can also be about the middle or the exit. So if your pattern is this, falling asleep isn't the battle, but staying asleep is. Your worst moment isn't bedtime, but the middle of the night. You know exactly what 3 a.m. feels like. Then sleep maintenance insomnia is the category you should be paying very close attention to. And one more important point, this doesn't mean something is wrong with you in some dramatic sense. It means your sleep has become shallow, watchful, or easy to interrupt at the point in the night when human sleep is naturally more fragile anyway. The mechanism matters because once you understand that, the goal stops being force myself unconscious and becomes something much more practical. Stop turning normal brief awakenings into a spiral. Type 3 circadian or schedule related insomnia. This one is different because sometimes the issue isn't that your brain is too loud at night, and it isn't that you keep waking once sleep has started. Sometimes the problem is that you're trying to sleep at a time your body simply does not believe is bedtime. That is circadian or schedule related insomnia. Your circadian rhythm is your internal clock. It's the timing system that helps decide when you feel alert, when you feel sleepy, when your body temperature rises and falls, when hormones are released, and when your brain is actually ready for sleep. And when that clock is lined up with your life, sleep feels much easier. When it isn't, everything feels weird. You get into bed at what looks like a sensible time on paper, but your body feels unconvinced. You're lying there thinking, I know I need to sleep, so why do I feel wide awake? Or the opposite happens. You have to wake at a time your body still treats like the middle of the night. So mornings feel brutal no matter how early you went to bed. This is where a lot of people accidentally blame themselves for a timing problem. Shift workers are the obvious example. If you work nights or rotating schedules, your sleep opportunity keeps moving while your internal clock tries to stay stable. Your body is getting mixed signals: light at the wrong time, meals at the wrong time, alertness when it wants sleep, sleep when it wants alertness. That's not a character flaw. That's a biological conflict. But you don't have to be a shift worker to have this type. You might be someone with a naturally delayed schedule, what people often casually call a night owl. If your brain doesn't really want to sleep until 1 in the morning, trying to force sleep at 10 can feel like trying to fall asleep at 7 in the evening. You may be tired in the abstract, but your clock hasn't started the sleep process yet. Or maybe your schedule is all over the place: midnight one night, 2 in the morning the next, sleeping in on weekends, catch up naps, very early alarms during the week, then a completely different rhythm on days off. The body likes regular timing. When the schedule keeps moving, the clock never gets a clear signal about when night actually is. And here's the clue that often gives this type away. If you sleep noticeably better when you're allowed to follow your own natural schedule, on vacation, on weekends, during a break from work, or any period when the pressure comes off, then the problem may not be that you can't sleep. The problem may be that you're trying to sleep out of sync with your own internal timing. That's a very different problem. Because in circadian insomnia, the main battle is not sleep itself, it's alignment. If this sounds like you may have spent years treating your sleep like a willpower issue, going to bed earlier and earlier, getting angry at yourself for not being sleepy on command, calling yourself broken when the real issue is that your internal clock and your desired sleep time are arguing with each other every single night. So ask yourself, is your sleep worst when your schedule is inconsistent? Do you feel sleepy late but not when you wish you did? Do you do better on your own timetable than on the timetable your life demands? If yes, circadian or schedule related insomnia may be your type. And if you're already recognizing yourself in one of these patterns, this is exactly why I built the sleep type quiz inside the Insomnia Reset. The full guide takes the self assessment you just did here and turns it into something practical. If you're the racing mind type, it walks you through worry time and the bedside brain dump. If you're the 3 a.m. wake up type, it gives you the step by step 3 a.m. wake up plan. And if your clock is the real issue, it shows you how to reset your sleep window without fighting your body blindly. In other words, once you know your type, you stop guessing. And that's when sleep advice finally starts to become useful. So, which one are you? The one whose brain turns bedtime into a staff meeting? The one who can fall asleep but can't seem to stay there? Or the one whose internal clock keeps fighting the life they're trying to live? For a lot of people, the answer is immediate. You heard one section and thought, yes, that's me. For others, it's messier. You may have one dominant pattern with a little overlap from the others. Maybe stress first created a sleep onset problem, and now you've also trained yourself to wake up and monitor the night. Maybe your schedule is irregular enough that it pushes your whole system out of rhythm, and then the frustration around that starts creating racing thoughts, too. That happens. Real sleep is messy. Human beings are messy. So, this is not a formal medical diagnosis. It's a practical framework for recognizing the main pattern you're actually dealing with. If your sleep problem feels severe, complicated, or persistent, a doctor or sleep specialist can help you sort out the formal diagnosis. But for most people, this simple question is the breakthrough. Where does your night actually go wrong? At the beginning, in the middle, or in the timing itself? Because once you can answer that honestly, everything changes. You stop throwing random sleep tips at the problem, you stop treating every bad night as if it's the same bad night. And most importantly, you stop blaming yourself for not responding to advice that was never built for your type in the first place. If you're type 1, You do not need more pressure at bedtime. You need your brain to stop treating the dark like an invitation to solve your entire life. If you're type 2, you do not need to panic every time you surface at 3 a.m. You need a calmer response that prevents a brief awakening from turning into a full spiral. If you're type 3, you do not need to try harder to sleep on command. You need your schedule and your biology to stop pulling in opposite directions. That is a much kinder way to look at insomnia. And it also happens to be a much more useful one because the hopeful part here is that all three types are understandable. They are not mystical, they are not personal failures, they are patterns. And patterns can be changed. Not overnight, not by force, not by pretending sleep is just about discipline, but by matching the fix to the pattern. That's exactly why I made the insomnia reset the way I did. If this video felt like a useful self assessment, the guide is the full version of that quiz you just took, plus the specific fix for your exact type. It helps you identify whether you're more of a racing mind, light sleeper, or irregular schedule pattern. And then it gives you the next step that actually fits. Worry time and the brain dump for the mind that won't shut off, the 3 a.m. wake up plan for the person who keeps surfacing in the night, and the sleep window reset for the person whose timing is out of sync. So if you finish this video thinking, okay, that's me, now what? That's what the guide is for. Not as a miracle, not as a diagnosis, just as a short, practical, science backed plan you can actually use at home tonight. Because the real shift is this: you are not just bad at sleeping, you have a pattern. And once you can name the pattern, you can finally stop fighting sleep in the dark.